Before I start my workout, I like to get a pump. Train the muscles, not the joints. So welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about food sensitivities, water retention, fat, you know, that kind of stuff. So let's go for a walk in the Spirit Park here in Harrison Hot Springs, and I'll just talk to you a little bit about this. Yeah, I think it's a valid subject to talk about. I think some of you guys are probably interested in this. This is the secret stuff of bodybuilding and looking lean and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think you'll get something out of it. Mountain. So I recently had somebody comment on one of my videos, and it wasn't a hate comment, so that was nice. Refreshing. So refreshing not to have a hate comment. But this person was asking me a little bit about, hey Jason, I noticed you're putting on a little bit of weight. Maybe your body fat is at a little bit higher level at this point than say other times. What the hell, man? You're out of shape. I just put you in the dryer for a little while, and what the hell happened? Look at this. Look at that. This one, fine. See? Perfect sock. No problem. That one, too much carbs, man. Too much carbs. And basically, what am I doing with my diet? Do I have a different goal in mind? Like, what's going on there? So first and foremost, I want to clear this up. My first and foremost goal is to nourish the body and to gain some muscle. Of course, at my age, you know, I still want to gain muscle. I still want to put on size, but at the same time, work with the limitations of my physical body. So say there's little tweaks from the hockey injuries or something like that, or say something's tight, I got to work around that. It's kind of like the bane of every athlete, right? There's always the challenges that come up, and it's not always training or how hard you can train. Sometimes it's whether the body's resisting you in that moment, and it can resist you in many different ways. Sometimes it's just in overall body tightness. Sometimes it's an old injury coming back to surface itself or something like that. Other times everything's going smoothly. Other times you can just push, and there's no problem, right? So one thing I think is a big mistake that a lot of people think is that when you're training and you're trying to train at a highly elite level, say you're competing or you're at the highest level, you're a professional athlete or something, these professional athletes are always pushing themselves so hard that sometimes they push through things they shouldn't push through, and sometimes they have certain injuries, or most of the time they're actually training through an injury. I mean, if you talk to most professional athletes, especially if they're dealing with contact sports and stuff. But the same thing goes for bodybuilding or strongman. I mean, these guys are basically pushing themselves constantly, whether they're natural or not. And sometimes the body can only be pushed so much before it snaps, right? Bad sock. Bad sock. I play a different paradigm here. I'm basically saying work with the body, push it, but then back off if it starts to resist you a bit. So that's one thing. So my main goal, just to finish off with this, is to nourish the body, gain strength, gain muscle, of course, and stay at a decent body fat level. What happened back there, man? But at the same time, my main goal isn't to be shredded all the time. I mean, although I like to lean down here and there because it looks much better. It looks more appealing, right? And it's better for YouTube, I guess. So the next thing I did was I basically changed my diet around, like I talked about in the last video. I basically talked about cooling and heating foods. I changed a lot of my foods around to more cooling type proteins and things. And I did incorporate more carbs. Now, some of them weren't high quality carbs, okay? I was having some ice cream and stuff here and there. And also I'm having these fruit smoothies and stuff. I'll show you a clip of me doing that. All right, I'm gonna make a shake. I'm making a shake. I have a Vitamix blender or whatever. I'll put a link down in the description because this thing will chew up anything. This thing chews up shit. Like, you could put your shoes in this and you probably would end up with some sort of liquid. I don't know if you want to drink that, but it probably would be liquefied by the time you're done. I'm going to put some grapes in here because we had to finish them off anyway. But yeah, I'm going to be working out as well, so high glycemic carbs during workout aren't necessarily as bad. Say you're going to be a real stickler for the rules here. Put a little bit of grapes in here for flavor. I'm going to put some blueberries in here too. A bunch of those in there. And I get them at the side of the road in Agassiz, so I have a clip of that actually picking them up. So that's where I get these puppies. There's no spray, no pesticides on these puppies, so that's what makes them good. So you don't want those pesticides, man. Now I'm going to get some kale and some grape leaves from the garden and put that in here. And then some protein powder, and that's about it. Some ice. Put some ice, yeah. Let's go get some grape leaves. Most people don't know that you can eat the grape leaves, right? So grape leaves are actually pretty good. So good for inflammation, supposedly. Good for heart. And good for adding greeny stuff to your stuff. Greeny stuff to your protein shake. Okay, that one goes to some grapes there. I don't want to take that leaf away because it goes to some grapes, so let's go over here. All right, here we go. Grape leaf. And in here. And that one right there. Good. 3 leaves. Grapes. Grape leaves. And here's some kale. As you can see, kale grows pretty big. So it's like overtaking this whole area. It's pretty big, right? So quite a bit. So yeah, if you have a kale plant, it seems to last for quite a long time. And there we go. Some kale. All right, kale, grape leaves, kale. Wash the bugs off, although they could be extra protein, so. All right. In it goes. Put some protein powder in there. I'm using a whey protein. You can use a vegetarian protein, whatever you want. Yeah. And because this blender blends so fast that it'll warm it up, right? So I want to kind of cool it down. I like having a, not cold shake, but at least it's a little bit cooler. 4 or 5 cubes in there. So I basically put everything from grape leaves from the grapevine we have outside to kale. I put kale in there, I put broccoli in there, and I put a protein shake in there, like I put whey protein, right? And I'll put 3 scoops of whey protein and throw in everything but the kitchen sink in this puppy, and then I'll put some fruit in there. So I'm trying to kind of find the right blend of fruit. Blueberries and berries and stuff are obviously a higher quality because berries are more of a stable blood sugar type of fruit if you're going to have fruit, right? So I have more of that, but I've been having watermelon in there and everything, just experimenting, playing around, right? So here's something to talk about. So sometimes when people are bodybuilding, especially in this whole Instagram age and everything, everybody's just obsessed about being lean all the time, right? But they're not thinking about long term, about putting on muscle long term. And I think some people, they get a little bit too nervous about putting on a little bit of body fat or even retaining some water. And the thing is, some foods will make you retain water, especially carbohydrate, right? Called a carbohydrate because hydrate, right? Hydro, water, right? So carbs and water go together. So sometimes when you have a lot of carbs, you're going to spill over a bit. You're not going to look as lean. And some carbs are going to be a little bit more, let's just say your body might be more sensitive to them than others. And the body may have a certain reaction to them. It may retain water based on it. But it doesn't mean that you're automatically putting on body fat, right? It just might be something that you don't want to eat before a photo shoot, but it doesn't mean that that carb is bad altogether. Get out of the shot. Get out of the shot. Fine. Sit there. Diva. There's actually a bear warning around here, so if I start swiveling, start turning around, looking around, that's why. So I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm just trying to survive. Just a simple man trying to live in a harsh world. So yeah, as far as carbs go, you know, spilling over, that's what happens sometimes. And if you spill over too much, like say if you're retaining a lot of water for a long period of time, it has been something I've noticed, you do have a tendency to be able to put on some body fat, right? But that doesn't always mean just retaining a bit of water is going to lead to a higher body fat percentage. So sometimes people mix up the two. So it happens both ways. Sometimes people are putting on fat and they say, hey, it's just water retention. We all know people that do that. And of course we know it's not water retention, it's just outright fat, right? So the thing is that if you're on a lower carbohydrate diet for a period of time and then you change your diet to a higher amount of carbs, you're going to be putting on a little bit of water. That's what's going to happen. You're not going to just fill out. At first you might fill out and get veiny and everything, and then you'll start to notice that you'll fill out and then you'll spill over. It's commonly referred to as spilling over, right? But one thing I have noticed that you might not be aware of is such thing as carb sensitivity or sensitivity to certain foods. Now, you can go to any naturopath and order a food sensitivity test, right? So doctors a lot of times won't do this in medical clinics and things like that. They just do it for allergies, right? But you can actually do it with a naturopath to find out mild sensitivities in your diet. And sometimes a sensitivity, because your body's immune system responds to this food, it may have a blood sugar impact or perhaps maybe not the best impact as far as digestion and stuff like that. So you might notice that certain foods just don't agree with you, or when you eat certain foods, you might have digestive issues. Or if you eat certain foods, you might have a lot of blood sugar crashes, all that sort of stuff. So sometimes a sensitivity test can help you understand what foods are best for you. Way back in 2002 when I won the BC Bodybuilding Championship, I actually competed. I had this really great opportunity. I competed 4 weeks before the contest in one show, and I was eating oatmeal, I was eating blueberries, I was eating egg whites, I was eating chicken, and I was eating really strict. I was basically eating next to no carbs a day, just 1 or 2 meals, that was it, right? The oatmeal and a little bit of blueberries and stuff. And then the rest of the day was just nothing but protein and green. But I kept on spilling over. Like every time I'd have any sort of carb, I noticed that my body would just all of a sudden look like it was 5% or 6% higher in body fat. And I was like, what the hell? And then the next day I'd be shredded again. So my brother suggested that I do a Vega test, something called a Vega test, where they run electric current through your body and they basically deal with the energy of certain foods or whatever. And anyway, I went to this naturopath, and I know it sounds all hokey and stuff, but it's based on how your body reacts to certain foods. So what happened was, as soon as I replaced chicken with turkey, I replaced my oatmeal more with fruit type of carbs. I stopped eating egg whites, and I started to basically use just yams, potatoes, that sort of thing for my carbs. Instantaneously, my physique transformed. So the next bodybuilding show, the guy that I lost to in the overall championship in the first bodybuilding show 4 weeks before, the next bodybuilding show, I actually beat him. So I was retaining significantly less water and I looked much leaner. Does it mean that I was actually at a leaner body fat percentage? No, but my body was responding differently. So I was retaining much less water, so I looked a lot better on stage, right? So here's the thing. Should you really be worried about water retention when you start spilling over a bit? When you're in a bulk or in your off season, I would say it's ideal to carry a little bit of body fat and a little bit of water to basically make sure that your body is overnourished. That's the whole point of bodybuilding. You want to make sure it's overnourished so that way the body feels like it can actually put on muscle tissue. Now I know I've done some experiments and I've actually made some videos of when you're lean. Sometimes, when you're leaner, sometimes your hormone levels change for the better and that sort of thing. So I think there is a happy medium in here. I'm not saying that you're supposed to be, 30-40% body fat level, but I do think there is going to be a happy medium that may be different for each person. So don't panic if you are having a bit of an off season and an on season. It's impossible to walk around at 4%, 5% body fat all the time. Although it looks good for a picture on Instagram or it looks good for YouTube, it's not going to be ideal for putting on muscle mass. Because you have to remember, when you're working with a bare bones minimum nutritional requirement, your body will also adapt to that and say, well, okay, this is how much nutrition I have. I will not put on any more muscle because my body will not be able to support it with this present amount of food that I have. Now that said also too, if your food is not perfect, and very few of our diets are perfect, you may develop nutritional deficiencies and stuff because remember, you don't have a surplus. You don't have a surplus of nutrients. You don't have a surplus of things. So say something happens where your body needs an extra amount of nutrients or an extra amount of calories, or maybe it needs a different amount of vitamins and minerals and things that come through natural sources. You're not going to have that in overabundance. You're just going to have your bare bones minimum requirement, if not that even. So it is good to overindulge when it comes down to your food here and there, as long as you're making sure you're getting the foundation of what's important in bodybuilding, with green like Hulk, which is the protein, which is the green vegetables, which is the carbs, and then having some fats in order to support your hormone systems and in order to support the overall health of the body, right? This is why a lot of bodybuilders have a bulk season. They basically want to make sure that there's an overabundance of everything, so that way when their body wants to put on muscle mass, or when they challenge the body to put on muscle mass, it doesn't feel like it's running a skeleton crew when it comes down to calories. Don't worry if you're retaining a bit of water, but if you start to notice that you're retaining water, but then you start to be able to pinch a lot more fat and it starts to sit there, well, yeah, you're putting on a bit of fat. If you are putting on a lot of fat, then yeah, just cut back on the carbs or the fats a bit and then up the protein to compensate. And then you'll notice that your body will start to regulate again, right? Maybe you replace some of those starchy carbs with a better glycemic index carb. That's one way to do it. Or you start to replace some of those starchy carbs with fibrous carbs instead, like green things like broccoli, kale, that kind of stuff. And then you'll notice that you'll start to regulate again. You'll start to notice that you'll actually start to burn off a little bit of body fat, or basically restabilize at a leaner body fat level. So what I'm doing right now is I'm basically having protein and carbs. I'm having a lower fat thing, so I know that whenever I have carbs, I start to retain water, especially when I'm eating white rice, or if I'm eating brown rice even. My body does have a tendency to retain water, and a lot of carbs through liquid form, like fruits and things and fruit smoothies, that's definitely going to cause me to retain water. But I'm not worried about that because I just want to put on muscle. I'm not really worried about looking extremely lean all the time. Although if I start to put on too much body fat, then I will cut back on some of those carb sources or change my choices. Like for instance, I was putting on a little bit too much water, too much, and a little bit of fat, I think, from having a lot of the simple sugars like watermelon and grapes and things like that in my shakes. So now I cut it back where I have more greens and berries in the shakes and not quite as much fruit, right? So I've been cutting that back as well. As healthy as some fruits can be, they can put on a lot of body fat too, because you know it's straight fructose, right? A lot of that type of sugar. So that can play a role and put on some body fat. So yeah, so I hope this helps you understand a little bit of how to adjust your calories, and that yeah, water retention sometimes is a part of actually eating carbs in your diet. You're going to retain a little bit of water unless you have a super fast metabolism, or yeah, maybe you don't have a sensitivity to carbs at all. Maybe you're just one of those fast metabolism super lean dudes, right? And I know a few of those guys, and I used to be one of them. Sometimes age plays a role too, right? So I hope this helps you out in your training. Mountain. And thanks a lot for watching. And if you need to help me, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com and make sure you support these Patreon supporters. Like, you just pray for these guys at night, because these guys and girls, because they're making this content possible, so thanks. Those of you who are interested in consultations and things, I do have them available on my website. I don't write out exact diets and things for people, but I do consultations. So if you're just wanting to have a question answer period of whatever to see what's going on with your training, what you can do differently, maybe what you can change and all that kind of stuff, I do have that available on my website. Mountain.